How often do you find yourself reaching for your phone in moments of stress or discomfort? Today, I sit down with Todd Steinberg, the co-founder of Komuso. He shares how conscious breathing can help you find calm, clarity, and control in the face of stress. You learn how a simple yet powerful breathing tool will help you make better decisions in challenging situations and how to manage the overwhelming anxiety that often accompanies a cancer diagnosis. Stay until the end to learn the breathing exercise you can incorporate in your daily routine that will leave you feeling more energized. Let's dive in. You're listening to the Born to Heal podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Katie Deming. After 2 decades of practicing as an oncologist and caring for thousands of patients, I've seen firsthand how our healthcare system places obstacles in your path to true healing. My guests and I will bridge the worlds of Western medicine and alternative healing to help you achieve optimal health. Expect to uncover new insights, share a few laughs, and maybe even shed some tears along the way. But most of all, we'll learn how to heal from within together. So let's dive into today's episode. I am excited to be sitting today with Todd Steinberg, the co-founder of Komuso. Welcome, Todd. It's so nice to have you.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Katie. I've been really excited to do this with you, and you've had so many other really talented and informed interviewees on before. So looking forward to taking part.
Awesome. Well, I think actually it would be great just to have you tell us how you came into founding Komuso and what that company is about, just to get us started.
Yeah, so it's interesting. About 6 years ago, I was in a completely different industry. I actually managed a student travel business and was pretty stressed out. I've always thought of myself as having a really high processor, I was thinking through problems and I was proud of that, I was being efficient and I was busy, totally part of the hustle culture, right? And then I hit a point where my heart rate was up, my blood pressure was increasing, I was having trouble sleeping. It was kind of the stress and the expectation of being so efficient and thinking so fast was taking its toll on my personal life. And so I said, you know what? My dad had died young of heart disease. And I said to myself, I just had a kid. I was like, this is not the way that I should be living my life. And no one ever taught me how to live my life. No one ever managed me through how to think. I got a lot of support on the quadratic formula and history and physics and all these things, but never on how to manage the way we think and to manage the way we breathe, right? So fast forward to a conversation I was having with my good friend who's a therapist. He's like, Todd, I really want to help you, but it seems like you should get into meditation. And I was like, sure, let's do it. So he had me sit cross-legged on the floor and into this position where my back had to be up straight. He's like, I want you to close your eyes and, and think about your breath and deep breaths. And I was like, I'm sorry, my back hurts. I can't continue this. Is there an easier way to meditate or, to feel a little bit calmer? And he's like, you know what? Let me simplify this for you. There's this straw breathing technique that I, provide for some of my clients that just needs something to kind of take the edge off naturally. And I was like, look, yeah, of course. So I put a straw in my mouth and I exhaled through this straw for, 30 seconds and, 2 or 3 rounds. And my exhales are going really long. And within 30 seconds, I could feel my heart rate coming down. I felt my shoulders relax. I kind of felt like this floating feeling. And I was excited, surprised, confused. I didn't know what was happening. And basically, he explained to me, look, you don't really understand the power of your breath until you experience it. And it's breath work, and within that is a meditative experience. So I went home and I talked to my wife, who at that time was a fashion designer. She's like, this is amazing. Let's wear it. Let's turn it into an actual tool. So we turned it into a necklace. Here it is here. It's called the Shift, and I'll demonstrate a breath for you here. It's pretty simple and it takes advantage of a pretty practical breathing technique of double breathing or just elongating your exhale. So you're going to take a deep inhale through your nose like this and then exhale through like this. Notice how my exhale went a lot longer. And when you do that for 3 to 4 or 5 times to be about 90 seconds or 2 minutes, you are literally sending a signal physiologically through your parasympathetic nervous system to calm your mind. because that's where the vagus nerve operates. And I'm sure you've taken them through this a lot of different times, but it's a way for you to immediately change your state of mind, whether you're in pain or having anxiety or just want to wake up into a peaceful state. This does the job, because everyone knows that it's hard to manage your thoughts with your own thoughts, but managing your thoughts with your breath is so much easier because you can control that. So that's how I got into it. And that's how we started Komuso. And, with over 200,000 people later breathing differently because of a simple tool, that's making a huge impact in their life and in our lives.
It's such a beautiful story of finding something that works and then creating a solution that can serve. And I love the fact that your wife was a fashion designer. And that is one of the things actually that I love about the shift, which I'm wearing mine as well. And, is that it's beautiful, that it's a beautiful reminder. And this is one of the things so the reason why I invited you on this podcast, the reason why, we've established a relationship is because I believe in this tool so strongly that I recommend it to all of my clients as a physical reminder to use your breath. And I love that it's a beautiful piece of jewelry, because I tell my clients, just put it on and just wear it. And then when you see it, oh, that's a reminder to breathe. Or when you're in a doctor's office waiting and you're nervous, it's a beautiful reminder that you're wearing around your neck. And the way that I've been using this in my practice, and actually the way that I originally came across you guys, was my mentor. So my mentor had said, this is a tool that can be very helpful for people. And he had shown us two. One was the Love Tuner. And so I was confused when I first saw yours, the Shift. I thought that it was like a whistle and that it was going to make a sound. But, then he explained, he said, no, these are two different tools. One is that you can make the sound and have like the love frequency. But this one, the Shift, is really to help people learn how to exhale more slowly than they inhale, and that this activates the parasympathetic nervous system and has a calming effect. And he was explaining it not from the perspective of people with cancer, but from just the perspective of what we're experiencing on the planet right now, that it's like challenging times, and that people can really use tools to help keep themselves in their center in a calm state of mind. And this tool, the Shift, is one of those things that you can use. And so I started using it myself, and I started using it with my children, which, thank you. When Todd heard that I was sharing mine with my daughter, that when she has like something stressful going on, she would wear my necklace. They sent me one so that she could have it. And actually she just got it, and she's super excited to have her own. But that I was using it with myself and my family. And then it dawned on me, and I realized, oh my goodness, my clients need this. Like, this could be so helpful. And so it's become an integral part of my practice to share this. And the way I just want to explain so that our listeners, because most of the people here are interested in cancer and how to manage through, but the way that I teach people to use this is, one, to just put it on. And when you're stressed, use it. When you're feeling anxious, use it. But then once you start wearing it, using it just periodically through the day, use it 3 times a day. And if you need like a trigger, like every time after you go to the bathroom, and you've washed your hands and then you're walking out, just like put it in your mouth and breathe. And what I've found is that it's an amazing rescue tool. So it's amazing for them in the moment when they're stressed, but it's also a great tool to start to reinforce healthy breathing patterns. That if you start to use this to calm yourself when you're not stressed, you actually just become more resilient to the stress when it shows up. And then it's easier to manage through those episodes, because basically you're helping to build your parasympathetic tone so that when something stressful happens, you have more reserve. You're not feeling so on edge, that it's just easier to kind of get yourself back. So I'm sure that's all music to your ears.
You just somehow summarized everything that I've been trying to say for so many years now, so eloquently. Thank you for that. And there's a few things you said that really struck a tone with me. And we keep kind of seeing the word slow, right? Slow down your breathing, which slows down your pace of thinking. I think with the reviews that we've had, the stories we've got from our customers, some with cancer have said that, when pain strikes or when fear of, X strikes, you start to launch into fight or flight. And in fight or flight, you get this rush of cortisol into your prefrontal cortex. So you're not able to think as well. I think that what you just said about creating a lifestyle of slowing down, that's what we call the Komuso way. It's like you just slow down. How often are we taking the time to actually just be? We're human beings, not human doings. So a lot of the time this phone gets in the way, and whenever we sit with ourselves, whether it's at a restaurant or we just get home or anywhere, we're always distracting ourselves, right? So what you were talking about and referencing with using, the slower breathing in the tool is that you develop this consistency and this habitual pattern of breathing as a preventative method, not just rescue, right? Because rescuing, there's all the data to support that, within 3 breaths, you can, down regulate your nervous system. But what are you doing when you wake up in the morning, right? That's the most important time to engage in, conscious breathing, because then you're sending a signal to your system saying, hey, look, we know that today might come with stress, right? That bus is never late. It's always there. There's always stress or anxiety, especially dealing with something like a disease or cancer. That's just this constant weight on your shoulders. So to enter your day with a breathing pattern that arms your nervous system with this sense of calm, it sets you up in what I call a hockey stance. You ever watch a hockey game, you see these guys skating in the wide, like they're ready to get hit. They know that it's a violent game, right? Football too. So why not get wide, get low, get ready? It's coming, right? So if you're wide and low, your nervous system is slowed to a point where, or engaged to a point where you're in your parasympathetic, then that breathing pattern is going to start to rewire your brain with neuroplasticity to say, hey, look, instead of having to be reminded so often to breathe slow, you're engaging some of those 23,000 breaths per day. And that's a real number. We're averaging over 20,000 breaths a day. So think about the patterns of that breathing. You're sometimes it's shallow, sometimes holding your breath with screen apnea. You look at your phone, you hold your breath. There's a way into a pattern where you feel a little bit better as a default method because you're just engaging with your breath. And that's what the tool does, right? It's physical. It's not connected to an app or technology. You're not getting notifications. It's just you and your body reconnecting to the present moment. And when you do that for 30 days, you will feel a lifestyle change because your state of mind will feel lighter, calmer. And I think for me, the most important part of it is feeling in control, because everyone knows what out of control feels like. And a quick story here is my wife was giving birth, and this is our first child. And the shift was just in concept then. We just had a small sample of it. And we had learned all these Lamaze breathing techniques, right? Anyone who's had a kid understands this. And she was ready for the pain, ready for the contractions. And then when those contractions hit, she forgot everything. She's like, just give me the sample. And she was breathing through the tool, and the nurse that was with us said, like, wow, your heart is in perfect resonance with your baby's heart rate. And it took a breathing pattern to get there. So sometimes, we just better to have something physical to get you going, like on training wheels, but it works in so many different situations.
What if healing cancer didn't have to be so overwhelming and confusing? What if you could access a higher level of consciousness to accelerate healing? And what if you had a clear roadmap to follow, a path to lead you out of the fear and uncertainty? Hi, I'm Dr. Katie Deming. As an oncologist who's cared for thousands of patients, let me guide you safely through the fog. My 6 Pillars of Healing Cancer workshop series is now available, and it's not too late to join. Choose from a range of powerful workshops, each designed to support your healing journey, covering nutrition, emotional well-being, hydration, physical practices, the mind-body connection, and spirituality. Select only the workshops that align with you, or for a limited time, buy the entire bundle and enjoy significant savings. Don't miss this proven holistic roadmap to clarity and deep inner calm to support your healing process. Check the link in this episode's description to learn more and sign up today. Remember, you've got this. You just said something there that is really, really valuable, is that when you're under stress, all the things that you've trained for, like, slip your mind. Like, it's really hard to reach in and find those things. And that's what's so nice is you don't have to think about it when you're breathing through it. It basically forces you into a breathing pattern that has your exhale slower than your inhale. And that is a way to calm the nervous system. And you don't have to think about it. Like, you can, and that's why I loved it. I gave it to my daughter who's 14. And I just said, she's like, well, what do I do with it? I said, just breathe through it. Like, literally, you don't have to know how to use it. Like, literally just breathe through it. And it's calming. And I love also what you said about, like, life is coming. And especially for people who are dealing with illness, like, you know that these waves are coming. Like, this is just hard. This is dealing with an illness like cancer is a big challenge, and it can feel very hard. And so those waves are coming, and to get wide and low and be prepared and using this tool. And I love what you said. You've just upgraded. Actually, what I will tell my clients is to use it first thing in the morning, as a way to set yourself up for success for what's coming in that day. And so I think that that's really valuable information that I had not been teaching people to do. I do breath work. It's interesting because I do breath work in the morning, but I don't do it with my Komuso. I do it separate. And then when I put it on, then I'm using it throughout the day. So thank you for that information. And actually, you said a word that I just wanted to ask you about. You said screen apnea. What is screen apnea? I haven't heard anyone use that.
This is so fascinating, and the science is still coming out on this, but we check our phones an average of 300 times a day. Okay. So you go back 20, 30 years ago, the phones weren't in our lives. And, you have this epidemic of a mental health crisis. It's like, well, there's something pretty obvious that's contributing to that. And that's that we are addicted to our screens. Okay. Some of it's great because we're reconnecting with people and we're socializing and we're being efficient and we're working basically around the clock, right? We're getting more done. But there's a consequence to that. And that's that we are depending on this screen to basically get us from what we should be internalizing, right? We should be introspective about our lives. But instead, we're using a device which the external information is dictating how we feel. And we're getting so much information that it overwhelms our nervous system. We don't notice it because you don't launch into this panic, fight, or flight. But what happens is when you check your screen, there's theories, and I subscribe to this because I catch myself doing it, where I'll get a notification from, let's just say, my wife, right? And I'll see her name pop up. I will, within a split second, wonder and worry about what that message is. So now I am holding my breath because my nervous system is saying, what if it's something bad? And it happens with my emails, with notifications about anything. When I'm checking the news, what happened? Did something happen? Are people okay? What's happening is you pause your breath for even a few seconds, and that's signaling your sympathetic nervous system. See, now you're going the wrong way. Now you're producing cortisol. Now you're producing adrenaline, norepinephrine, all these things that are launching you into, this spectrum of fight or flight where you're not fully, ready to go, literally sprint somewhere. But when you're living in and out of that mode all day, because 300 times a day you're checking your phone, how many times is your body going through that what if, that slight tick up in heart rate? It's not natural. It's not good. And that causes this catastrophic thinking where now you feel uncomfortable because you checked your phone. You don't even realize it. You're in a weird mood. You ever in a weird mood and you don't even know why? It's like, I don't know why I'm annoyed, but I'm annoyed. It's like, well, there's a reason for that. And when you're not aware of what you're doing and how you're breathing, you're not able to control how you feel. So I think our message in the Komuso way is more of like, let's put our phones down more often. Let's pick up our breathing. Let's reconnect because that feels good. How many times have you taken a deep breath and been like, oh, it feels great. It's like a sip of water when you're thirsty. It makes the body feel good, resets the mind, and puts you in a controlled state where, again, the wider stance, feel ready, you feel in control. And if you're more aware, like 90% of the battle, guys, is awareness. If you're aware that you're picking up your phone, if you're aware of your breath, then you can start getting into these deeper breathing patterns. And that's where, like, I'll just be writing an email and I'm noticing that I'm holding my breath, right? And then I'll have my necklace here. And it's like, oh yeah, I breathe. And this is me. I'm a founder of a breathing device, and I catch myself. So it is totally human to feel this way. But I want you guys to practice something, right after listening, is just pay attention in the next 24 hours to what's happening when you pick up your phone and how you're breathing. And I guarantee you'll catch yourself.
Yeah. Well, and as you were speaking, so last week I moved houses, and moving is insanely stressful. And I always forget. And then you're in the middle and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so stressful. But my phone was my biggest source of stress last week, because I was in between and I was like, okay, I have time. Like, I don't have clients right now. I've blocked some of my schedule. I thought I was going to be at a conference. So it was kind of perfect timing that I had my schedule blocked out and I was running. But then a message would come through on my phone that's something about my business and totally not important. Like, someone on my team had an interesting idea that they want. And I immediately was like, oh my goodness, and felt exactly like you're saying. I'm like, why are you so stressed? I'm like, and it was literally just picking up my phone and having a message that I was worried, oh gosh, now I'm going to get pulled back into this thing. But what you're describing is so true, that our phones can be triggering. And I'm just thinking about people who are dealing with illness, and maybe they're getting messages from doctors about results, like, talk about stressful. I really love that this is coming up in this conversation, because not only is this tool helpful to, get people back into breathing, but just that awareness of recognizing that your phones are potentially sabotaging you all day long. And I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you can help us, what do you do? So do you basically only check your phone a couple times a day, or, I'm just thinking about this because you brought up a really important point, especially for people who are sick. And I think about there are a couple things. One is that they may be getting messages from their doctors. But then the other thing is that sometimes people are sharing their stories. And so that message, they're receiving back in from other people who are trying to take care of them and be kind and supportive, but just the sheer input sometimes is not what we need. So I'm just wondering kind of how you deal with your phone.
I love that question, because it's a daily struggle. It honestly is, because I am addicted to my phone. I run a business and I have 2 kids, and there's a lot happening. So the one trick that I've used that is so effective, in that I know that I'm in a better place now with my phone, is, and I will actively do this, whenever I reach for my phone, in the middle of picking it up, I will put it down, because it's sending a signal. Because if let's just say I'm at dinner, right? And, my wife goes to the bathroom. What's your first impulse? Check my phone. What's going on? You don't need to know what's going on in your phone, right? You really don't. So by sending the signal to my brain saying, I'm uncomfortable, so I need the phone, and then putting the phone down, is then sending that signal right back to your brain saying, okay, I don't need this. So what do you do with this empty space, right? Like, okay, I can't check my phone. I don't have any other distractions. So what do? It's breathe. And I know it sounds like, but that's not going to help me. Of course it will. If you take 3 deep breaths as a replacement to checking your phone, that message is still going to be there in 10 minutes or in an hour or the next day. I know this because I realized that I can get a group of text messages sent back or emails sent back in the space of 10 to 15 minutes. I don't need to be doing it periodically for every 7 minutes. You're not efficiently doing that way. So I have times of day that I block off for my phone, especially when at night when I'm with my family, or when I just need to kind of turn everything off. When you start to work on that one trick, again, like in the morning, instead of reaching for your phone, reach for your shift or just breathe, right? If you can start to do that, you're reprogramming your brain to not need the phone so much. So you won't have to catch yourself and put it back down. You'll just kind of go into okay, I'm aware, interoception, right? Like, what am I feeling? I'm aware that there's discomfort somewhere. I don't know, an uncomfortable thought or something. And I'm going to sit with it. I'm not going to just cover it up and paint over it. I'm going to sit with it, breathe through it. And if I still feel that way in 30 seconds to a minute, then I can deal with it then. But for now, just going to use my breath.
I love that. So that's a great piece of advice. And actually, this happened to me over the weekend. My boyfriend and we had walked to have dinner somewhere, and then he ran back to the house to grab something, but he had carried my phone in his pocket because I didn't have any pockets. And so I was sitting at this restaurant, and then I realized that he left and he was gone for probably took him 15 minutes to walk back and get whatever he was coming and come back. And I remember sitting there and feeling like really uncomfortable. Like, what do I do when I don't have a phone to look at and I'm just sitting here by myself? And then it was so beautiful though, because I didn't have it, that I was just sitting there and I was kind of like staring off at the wall. And then I was looking at the people around me. And then I realized like, wow, there's really beautiful like plantings growing up this. I just started to notice things that I think that I don't notice, and I became more present. And so I love that piece of advice, because I think it's a way for us to be more present, and that like putting the phone down and then also having time set aside. And I actually think that hearing that would be very beneficial for people dealing with cancer, for the exact reasons that I just described, is that the dealing with the people who are, reaching out to you or not reaching out to you. There's the stress. The phone can be a source of stress either way for people who are sick. They're like, why aren't people reaching out to me? Or too many people reaching out to me. Both of them can be stressful, but saying, okay, like at certain times of the day, I'm going to set aside some time, and to be able to be intentional about that, but not being jerked out of the present moment every, whatever the interval is that your phone is going off, and kind of pulling yourself out of that. So yeah, I think we're all addicted to our phones. Like, I'm just like, no question about it. It just is addictive. Well, so go ahead. Were you going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah. Just one last point here is like I'm not an oncologist, right? But there is research out there that suggests that your heart rate has, some correlation to your immune system, right? And when you control your stress response, and when you're, calmer, chances are you're doing something good for your immune system. And when your body's fighting so hard against these intruders, right? Whether it's cancer or other immune diseases or conditions, there's something you can do that's within your power. And that is to try, which I've never been through this, so I have no idea what this must feel like, that constant stress in that battle. But to be able to, within yourself, control the moment and do it through something that is not a distraction, like something for your biology and your nervous system. You look to centenarians, in these 5 blue zones, they live to, post 100 years old, doing these same things, right? A lot of it is nutrition and sleep and lifestyle, but they're taking walks and they're being mindful about the things around them. You're just saying that walk, you're hearing birds chirp and things of that nature. They're slowing down. So the message is, and I hope this resonates, is that you can help yourself by just trying to be more present with what your body is saying to you, by breathing through what's happening, because those clouds will pass. Like there's always these incoming thoughts. We have 50,000 thoughts a day. It's crazy. But the problem is that 90% of those thoughts actually repeat the next day. And when there's a lot of those thoughts are stressful, we're in that, that stress loop, that pattern. So breathing can break that up and potentially help you with your immune system to, better your health situation too.
Absolutely. Well, and this reminds me, so I teach clients to the idea of like, you're a young garden. Like when you plant seeds in the ground, you don't let people like trample all over your garden. You put up a little fence and you protect that garden and you water it and you tend it. And when you're sick, you're like this young garden. And I use this analogy when I'm talking about people in their lives. So like all of us have people in our lives that sometimes it can be toxic to have those people in their lives. And especially if they're coming at them with, ideas of what they think they should be doing, putting all this pressure. And it's like, you really need to set boundaries, right? So I use this metaphor in speaking about boundaries with other people, but you're bringing up a good point of putting boundaries around our life in general. And the phone may be one of those things to put up boundaries around, and then using the tool like the shift to help bring yourself back into balance so that you can be clear on, okay, what is best for me? And what are the things that I need to set limits around, in creating that awareness? And I want to ask you this question, because most of the people who are listening to this are not going to have this shift right now, and they can do this practice without it. And so I want you to tell people how they can get into this breathing pattern without it, so that way, anyone who walks away from this episode has another tool in their pocket to, help them through.
Happy to do it. So there's actually two, right? So we're talking about preventative breathing and then rescue breathing. The preventative breathing is super easy. So let's say you wake up in the morning, and what's happening when you're sleeping at night is you're breathing in a very equal pattern, right? It's like usually 3-4 in, 3-4 out. So we wake up, and what do? We check our phones, right? We launch into 30 different notifications. Now we're fight or flight, and you're creating that pattern, right? So you're kind of jolting your nervous system when you wake up. And so what we say is like, instead of that jolt, let's ease ourselves into the day, right? Get into that wider stance. And there's a breathing pattern called resonant breathing or coherent breathing. It's just 5 in, 5 out. So you always want to breathe through your nose, fill your belly with air, expand your diaphragm, and then let the exhale flow through pursed lips, like you're blowing out birthday candles. It feels so good. I mean, just doing that one right now felt good. You do that 5 in, 5 out for 2 minutes, and you're securing your nervous system to feel really good, because now you're establishing that breathing rate and heart rate for the first part of your day. It's so important, right? So then there's rescue breathing, because we know stress is going to happen. We know anxiety is going to happen. So that's where we just instill the rescue breath of the double exhale. So instead of the 4 in, 4 out, or 4 in, 5 out, you go 4 in and then double the inhale with the 8 exhale. So it's 4 in and then and that is going to really activate your vagus nerve and your parasympathetic, so that if your heart rate's up or if you're in fight or flight, you're going to come all the way back down. So if you can start practicing this now and get into a habit of it, I think you might be surprised to see that instead of that weird mood that you're in, you're kind of in a good mood for weird reasons. And it's not a weird reason, because you're actually giving yourself a hug, and you're doing that physiologically, in that you're helping yourself feel better, and you're doing it every day instead of it becomes a habit every day. And guess what? Your health and your mood and your stress levels might respond to that in such a positive way.
That's great. And I think another way to think about this, what you just described, is I always help my clients prepare for what's coming. So say they're going to see the oncologist, and they know that they're going to get results in that visit. And the term scanxiety is like a real term, like people who are waiting for results of a scan, they're anxious about that, obviously. And so if you know you're going into an appointment, or you're going to receive news that there's a lot riding on that, and it feels stressful receiving that news, one way that they could prep themselves for that is doing that 2 minutes. So before you're going into an appointment like that, sitting in your car, taking the 2 minutes and doing the breathing. And then if you find that you're starting to get activated and nervous when you're in there, then you could do this. And I love that you do the 4-8, because that's exactly what I teach people. Is before I had this shift, I was teaching them 4-8 breathing. So I love it. So these are tools that you can really use. And it is really important, because just like you said, the waves are coming, and it's how do we get ourselves like wide and low. And anytime you're going in to see the doctor and this is stressful, it's like, these are tools that you can use to prepare yourself. And not that it changes what is coming at you. What it does is it prepares you to be more resilient and to receive the information in a way where you're not totally out of body. You know, a lot of times when we receive news, we just basically, like, our head leaves our body, and we're just like, it's almost like Charlie Brown's teacher is like, wah, 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 wah. Like, that's literally, I would describe people like, I know I'm sitting here and I'm speaking English to you, but when you leave here, you're going to be like, what did she say? It's like this talking head, because it's just the stress of the diagnosis. It doesn't matter how clear I can communicate. Sometimes you can't hear it. And so what this breathing does is shifts that so that people can be more present to actually hear what is actually happening and not lose it in the moment.
And that's so beautifully said. And I think that what you just said is what we talk a lot about, which is, it's not about calm. It's not about creating some Zen-like experience, because that's really hard to achieve, on and off all day. I think the victory is in clarity. You can get clear, meaning you can make a good decision. Then you've won the moment. Because when you're clear, maybe you have a right to be angry. Maybe you shouldn't be calm in that moment, right? But when you're clear, it allows your prefrontal cortex, all those executive decision making functions to function in a way where they're making the best decision. I mean, all of us have been there where we've made that bad decision. And why? Maybe we're emotional. Maybe we weren't thinking clearly because of whatever was happening in the environment. It's like, we're human. This is what we're programmed to do. But when you can feel, this is where creating this brand has changed my life, because I now feel control. And I can't explain why that feeling is so good, but because I go on a roller coaster every day of emotions. We all do, right? I'm from sad to angry to happy to whatever. It's okay, right? Like, that's normal. But I feel like I can always get to a place where I can get clear and then make good decisions. And that's where that can compound into feeling better. And that clarity starts to lift your mood a little bit more every day. So imagine that being your new normal, all because maybe you have a conscious breath or two.
Yeah. Well, and this is also another thing that is really critical in this space, is getting clear so that you can make good decisions. Because as you can imagine, people who are dealing with cancer are making decisions out of fear all day long, because maybe their biggest fear has now come true. So now they're like, now I really do have something to be afraid of. So then it's like this self-perpetuating. So then they're like, no, I should be afraid because I have cancer. But the problem is that exactly what you describe is we don't make the best decisions in the moment if we're not clear. And basically the frontal cortex has gone offline when we're in fear. And basically the amygdala is running the show, which is basically all about survival and no good for us making nice, well thought out decisions. And so, getting that clarity so that you can make the best decisions. And also, you talked about the text is the text is going to be there, but the same thing with these decisions that people are making and that the issues that are real that they have to think through are still going to be there if you just take a breath or two and get clear so that you can at least bring that frontal cortex online and really think through rationally, okay, what are the pros? What are the cons? How can I think about this and make a decision from a very grounded place? So I think there's so much there. And I'm so happy to speak with you because you know that I'm a super fan and love the tool. And so it's just really nice to have a conversation with you. Can you tell me, how can people find you if people want to find out more about you or the product? How can they find that?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So the website is Komuso. It's Komuso design.com. And just a quick little story about why it's called Komuso is we were inspired by these Japanese monks out of the 17th century Japan who used a flute to meditate. It was called the shakuhachi. And the interesting thing about them was they were known as the monks of nothingness, in that they would put a basket over their head to hide their ego, to suppress their ego. And they would be forced to live in the present moment. And they're blowing through it. They called it blowing Zen, is blowing through a flute. So we took that concept of, ancient wisdom and kind of paired it with modern technology in terms of, an 8-second exhale. We said, hey, what if people wear that? What if they wear it against their heart to kind of come back to a time when, technology and all these modern pressures and the hustling culture didn't exist, that we could just kind of be. So yeah, the website is komusodesign.com and the Komuso way is really rooted through that slowing down to get clarity and imagining what your life could look like with all of that. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share that message.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will have a link in the show notes so people can find your website as well. So thank you so much, Todd, for being here. It's been a privilege.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me on Born to Heal. It's been a privilege to share this time with you. And I hope that today's episode has offered you valuable insights on your journey toward optimal health. Please consider subscribing, sharing this podcast with your friends, and leaving us a review. To learn more about how you can work with me, please visit katiedeming.com. You can find additional resources in the episode show notes linked below, and remember to join us next week as we continue to explore more holistic approaches to healing. Until then, this is Dr. Katie Deming, reminding you that just like me, you were born to heal.